Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mortgage Heroes Weekly Podcast. I'm Andy.
I'm Brian.
I'm Will.
So, you guys, today the show title is Inventory Incoming. I'm excited about this because I think we're finally seeing a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, like a really long tunnel.
I've been seeing that light for a long time. Or it's right there.
I actually didn't prepare that statement, but I was like, yeah, this is a pretty long tunnel. We're finally seeing some light at the end of it, it looks like. Of course, there's always some things to talk about when it comes to inventory, especially nowadays. Rates are a big part of that, of course, the lock-in effect. But whether people actually put their house on the market, we're going to get to that. But the reason is because kind of that's the thread and the theme of like this article today. And, you know, the first one right out the gate, it's Brian brought this to us. So, Brian, you brought this about taxes and about subsidies for taxes or, you know, basically different states have different property tax assessment methods and this and that. So, I want to start there. Is that okay?
Yeah, no. And it's actually the reason I looked into that is because I had a client reach out to me literally this last week. And he's like, hey, you know, I got 2 property tax bills. One's blue and the other one's green. And I'm like, oh, interesting. The first one's probably just gonna be a copy. That one gets paid through your property, through your escrow account. Like that one's okay. And then he's like, but the green one, I'm like, oh, it's supplemental. It's a one-time bill. Don't worry. It's probably gonna be a few $1,000s. Like, you know, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, every time you buy, it gets reassessed, so the value, you know, goes up. And then he sent me the bill, and he's like, yeah, it's not just a few thousand. It's $8,000. And I'm like, wait a minute. Send me the bill. And I went to look at it, and I realized that there was a increase of $6,000 among other costs that then at the end said it was basically adjusted because of Prop 13. So I looked into it, and it turns out in certain pockets in certain areas, this Prop 13 basically, you know, implied a higher cost once they moved in. They purchased the house last year. This time around, when they went to go pay property taxes, it was substantially higher than what I've seen any supplemental bill be. Yeah.
So what's their solution in this then? I mean, they're being stuffed an $8,000 bill.
Yeah. And
what is the outcome for them?
So we called to see if their escrow account could cover it, you know, based on what they have on there. But unfortunately, there isn't enough to cover the whole amount.
Not.
There's, you know, of course not. So what they're going to have to do is unfortunately come out of pocket and, you know, pay it this one time. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, it is a
So this kind of brings up the concept of like how property taxes are paid in different places. You know, California, like a lot of things, likes to be an outlier in certain things and do things in a very creative way. And so I know that we have, in some cases, benefited from Prop 13 and then been punished or it's been punitive in others. But I just wanted to talk a little bit today about, because of this, like there's a problem for people outside of our area that's becoming something that we are having to get more familiar with. And I'm going to bring up your Pennsylvania transaction from a couple months ago about that property tax. Remember that one? It was like $37,000, something like that. Was it Tennessee or Pennsylvania? Sorry, I forgot the state.
No, it was Pennsylvania.
Okay, so, well, there could be a Tennessee one, that's fine too. But like I know in Texas, property taxes are commensurate based on property assessment. And so one of the things that the article that Brian brought to the table was about how, you know, when there's rapid increase in home values, that also in states where the tax is commensurate to the home value, that ramps up people's tax expenses as well. But if their income isn't keeping pace with that, they can find themselves in big trouble really quick.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole thing about Prop 13, when it was established back in 1978, it was all about, you know, making sure that there's affordability, making sure that, you know, the state just doesn't increase their property taxes. So they want to put it at that 1%. So this kind of, you know, when Brian spoke about this story right now, I'm just like, whoa, well, how? How is it that, one, your escrow can't cover it? And how is it that we miscalculated or the lender miscalculated what that impound should be to cover whatever that supplemental tax would be? But in this case, you're saying it is not a supplemental. It's an $8,000. Like what this purchase price was, like a $2-3 million home.
No, it wasn't. It was around $750.
Yeah, the math is not mathing, Andy. We missed your data here now.
I'll show the property tax. I could show it so you could share it on. But basically, at the bottom of the property tax, it says Prop 13 approved tax, and then $6,000 among other costs, and then totals out to like $8,000.
So is it possible that the Prop 13 that was connected to it has been rescinded? Because it would even though it might be called supplemental, it would be supplemental in the sense that the previous owner who had the property taxes fixed because of Prop 13 The new buyer is not subject to that. The property's not subject to it anymore. Yeah. So now they're going to get reassessed at value now. That's like the argument against the California method that they brought up even in the article. It's like they use the term, I want to make sure I say it right, horizontal equity issue, which is when you have two homes that are like right next to each other, one that's been there for like 40 years, someone's owned it for 40 years, their tax basis is super low. Yes. And then you move in next door in a similar model or a couple doors down, similar model, exact same house, same square footage, same number of bedroom, bathroom count, but you bought it today's price and you're paying today's tax rate, and it's this, very lopsided tax bill. Now that's kind of, you could play that both ways. Like, well, that's just the cost of doing business in days like this, right? Well, if that person that had the low tax base is going to move and they are not qualifying for Prop 13, well, then they're going to end up being at tax high basis too. Yeah. But in other states like Texas, their whole argument is, well, if we just have kind of more lateral tax so that everyone's property is paying, or they're paying commensurate to the amount of the value, then it doesn't matter when they bought it. It's just based on what it's worth.
Yeah. Correct. Which is a lot different than California.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, way, way, way different. Over there, it's like, wait a minute. The school district, we need more payment. We need to pave more roads. We need to cover that somewhere. So where do we go? We go towards the homeowners, which for me, it's kind of, that's not a cool thing to do.
But the offset is in some of these same states, they don't have income tax. So kind of the justification, if you will, on the budgeting side. Now, I didn't know I was going to bring this up right now. Well, right, but that way. But what I was going to say is this ultimately becomes like a budget matter, because if you're the state and you have income coming in from all these varieties, well, you don't have income tax coming in. Yeah. So if you don't have income tax, it's coming from property tax. So we in California, we have a flat property tax, 1%, but we also have income tax and all the other taxes. But the way that revenue comes in looks different, and so then it's weighted one more way than the other, because it's not at all in the income tax sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes perfect sense.
So, I mean, in the end, I can't say necessarily it's like it's good or bad, because look at where we've seen migration go. Migration has gone to a lot of people or a lot of places where they do have this kind of this tax that kind of adjusts year after year or every 2 years. But people are like, well, I'm not paying income tax because I'm retired, so what am I going to do?
Yeah.
I think it's the way that they see it. They feel like they're not paying it up front. They're paying it in the back end. So it's like, oh, I'd rather pay it where I don't see it than it come out of my pocket that I, take home and pay.
Yeah.
So I have a couple thoughts. First of all, the whole issue with it getting qualified, I mean, I don't want to say like this is an oversight on the underwriter's case, but I mean, if you know that there's $8,000 of like step up in tax, that if it's not one time, if it's one time, that's one thing. If it's not one time, and that's like a reset of what the tax should be, that means they would have had to have enough margin in their DTI that
to have covered that.
You follow what I'm saying? Because that $8,000 over 12 months is what, $750 a month or something like that. That's a lot. On top, that's what I'm saying. On top of, that's a lot. So. Yeah. Anyhow,
and going back to why people are, they're going to other states. There's also a lot of people that are actually just staying put here in California because of that luxury of that property tax that we do have. And what's cool about it with our Prop 19 is when you originally purchased that property, that tax stays, that assessment stays there. So we've seen, for instance, my mother-in-law, when she bought her home, her taxes are like, I want to say like $600 or $800 some dollars a year, and they gradually go up, because they do go up, but very gradually, so those are some of the benefits, and that's what's actually allowing a lot of people also here in San Diego of giving them a reason why not to sell.
Right. Yeah, because their acquisition is like, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Their basis is super low, and their cap for annual increases is also very low too. The thing that I think sometimes people, and I've answered this question years ago in the past when I was originating, is like, well, why is my bill higher this year than last year? Isn't it flat? And yes, sometimes there's bond measures that we as voters, even if we didn't vote for it, the consensus was we're going to vote on behalf of this tax to fix this thing or build this whatever, and that gets applied to everyone's tax jurisdiction in that jurisdiction. Yeah. Most people don't look at all that there's like a tax on local properties around this area for mosquito control. Yeah. And that's on
vector mosquito.
Vector control and mosquito surveillance.
So there's like stuff like that, and you have stuff for the community college or for Southwestern College, and you have other things for the school district. And so bond measures that make their way to ballots that then are tied to property taxes end up showing up on your bill.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I like it. I like, not having to worry about like putting the net, when you have a, like when you go to Florida, right? Like you go to somebody's pool and it's covered. They have this covered to to avoid intruders like mosquitoes.
A lanai.
You know?
And
So-
we know Will loves his cologne too, so he's able to wear it here
that's
free.
Texas. I went over there. I'm telling you, I love Texas. It's all good. I won't mess with Texas either. But I've gone over there. I put my lotion, the cologne. Man, them mosquitoes, bro. I
love you.
Dude, Jesus.
You're like a target.
You know, and so here, the luxury of paying into that mosquito surveillance, I just feel like it's much better.
Yeah.
And I think it's a dollar well spent.
And I just brought that up only because, some people don't take time to actually look at how their tax bill is broken down. Yeah. And then when they go, well, why is there this adjustment, or why am I paying $50 extra a month, whatever, there's something that has changed since the last time you looked or the last time you got your bill.
Yeah.
And just be aware of that. If you don't know, you can ask one of the guys. You can send us your tax bill. We'll look at it. But my point in general is just be aware of what you're being taxed for and understand how the tax rules here in California work. Yeah. Or if you're moving out of California, you got to understand where you're going because of the situation that you had a couple months ago where an escrow, and you're like, wait a minute, what's this $37,000 tax bill connected to closing the deal? So, do you want to talk about that?
No,
or do you want
that's just crazy. It's just every state has a different transfer tax, and city, right? State, then the city, what they charge. But going back to the taxes, I like that you bring up that point. When you look at your taxes, the great thing about it, at least here in San Diego, when you're seeing the taxes, it gives you a breakdown of where your money is going into what department, and they actually put a phone number there, which is pretty cool. I had a client that here in San Diego, we have what's called a Melrose. It's an additional tax to your property tax. And so usually it'll stay there between maybe, I want to say like 20 to 25 years.
25 years.
And I had a client that needed to qualify in order because it was just the income was so tight, right? And so the property was going to be 23 years since it was built, so it had 2 more years of Melrose. So we were able to contact that number for that Melrose where it pertained to, pay that off, and
smart.
that reduced,
property tax.
put us in a position exactly. Okay. So that put us in a position where we qualify. That's how tight our debt to income ratio was. Wow. That we had to really get creative.
Yeah,
and so we were able to pay that Melrose. And the reason I thought about that is because many years ago, I had a client where she was refinancing. She's like, I just want to pay the Melrose.
Like up front?
Up front. I just want this is my forever home. I'm paying that all up front. And so she did. And so those are cool things that you can do. Yeah. So that's a cool thing. Pay attention to the property tax bill. Just look at those numbers and then familiarize yourself with it if there's any concerns with it.
Yeah. Nice. And last thought for me on this, guys, was just that, there's going to be like this whole reassessment process, and there's constantly things that are going to be brought up or considered or try to retool to try to balance out whatever imbalances there be. But my note to the audience at large is just be aware of what the local stuff is first, then the county and state stuff second and third, and then all together. I'm not saying only number one or whatever. You have to know them all. But if you do not know them, take one step in the right direction and get yourself familiar with your own tax bill, so you're aware of which things are changing, how frequently they're changing, and then what those changes mean to you.
And that's it. And then when you're buying out of state, you brought up that point of $37,500 for our last transaction that we did in Pennsylvania. That was just a transfer tax on top of the 20% down that they wanted to put down because they sold a property here in Poway. They just wanted to make sure that they go. And a lot of those funds were because of the school district. And I was just amazed how expensive some school districts are.
Well, remember, you had come in and you were like, hey, guys, I just went and dropped off my checks because I was building the ADU. I had to go pay the Sweetwater Union High School District. I had to go pay the Chula Vista Elementary School District because for proportionate to your square footage you're building, and you have to go and pay that to the school because now we're generating tax revenue for the education. So
that's it.
There's that.
Yeah.
This does have something to do with inventory, which is why we put it first, Brian, because obviously it's a real situation that your client's dealing with right now. But when it comes to people looking to sell their house, there's lots of things like the lock-in effect, having their rate, the price of the replacement home they got to get. Yes. Like there's all these scenarios, and especially if someone's going to cross out of California or from a property state that has lower tax coming to California, these are considerations people have to make. What's interesting to me is the huge change in pending home sales in just 1 month's time. It wasn't too long ago, guys, episode 103. If you did not check out that episode, we talked about pending home sales being the lowest ever only a couple of shows ago. And now we have February homes resales jump more than expected in the month of February, immediately after January being the lowest ever.
Yeah.
What the heck? It's like this bipolar listing world.
You think it's lagging data?
Well, it's lagging because it's March and we're talking about it in that sense. But once you have, yes, it's partly that. I honestly, you know what I think this was? I think this is people who were waiting to list until after they knew what happened in November. Remember we talked about that? Yeah. We're like, people are going to wait till November and either stay or stay put or whatever. There's, again, the qualifier for me is there's always a subset of life situations that are happening. Yeah. Death, divorce, debt, new baby on the way, new job, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
After that, it's really just a preference. And I think that this preference we're seeing now is like January had the lowest because, okay, well, the inauguration's going to happen. Is it going to happen? Like there was all that kind of stuff happening in the political ecosphere, but then, okay, done. February, boom, resurgence. People are like, okay, now I know what I'm going to do, where I'm going to go, what my life for the next 4 years might look like.
Yeah.
And boom, here we go.
And as a reply to that, I feel that as we progress in the year and we get a better idea of, the economic outlook, where things are heading as we, we'll get into it. I think that's going to, give people, like you said, that intuition that, okay, this is my time. And as the year progresses, people are going to go in tiers like, okay, this is my time now. Okay, in the summer, this is my time now. But what I'm curious to see is that, like you said, the seasons of selling, and actually like, what we're expecting from history before is that, everything has changed and it goes back to the preferences. It's not like, you can predict that spring's going to spring and summer's going to be booming. Last year we got the spring rush late in the year. Mm-hmm. So I think, the more that the year progresses and the more data that we start, seeing and what direction it goes, I think that's going to open up even more, inventory and a lot more people transacting as well.
Yeah. I mean, overall, this is good news.
Yeah. I take it like as good news, whether it might be a little negative here and there. I think in the big picture, we're moving forward.
Yeah, ramping up into January and February with the contracts that are houses under contract that close in January, under contract in December, January, closed in February. I think we're going to see a continued spillover into March as well. I mean, even just walk around the office. I mean, you guys have been opening new escrows, so I know we're now at the end of March, but the point is even the amount of names on the board right now are more than they were in February, which was more than there was in January. So even at our little micro level of our own office and our branch, there's a trend in that same direction that follows what this is saying here.
Yeah, no, most definitely. On a side note with this, the only other the negative impact is that the homes are still lasting longer on the market. And the reason that we're able to see more activity is because also we're expanding into other states. So that also helps out. But if we really just become laser focused for San Diego, we are going to see lesser transactions happening here right now, because than last year.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of, I don't know. I'm going to say it's not like, whoa, there's a big surge.
There's parts of the county that have way less listings. So like in the fragmentation of San Diego, there's some parts of the county that have way less listings than they did a year ago. And I'll pick a random one just because I happen to be like looking. I'm going to pick Ramona. Like Ramona had a lot more listings last year than did now. So we're kind of in that little pocket that's trending in the different direction. Hummel and Del Zura is another one too, because all these places that I saw for sale in November and December, well, they're sold and now they're closed and now there's less. So it's like where there used to be 35, 40 that match your search results, now there's like 10 or 12.
Oh, okay. Got it.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if I'm just out looking at land, right? Because that's where I want to go. Right. But my point is
away from us.
No, not away from you guys. I just want to go and smell fresh
not
air.
Away from you guys, but away.
Big trees and wear my boots all day. No, but my point in bringing that up is there's always the localization thing, like we talk about. But in general, for the housing market and the health of the housing market, I think you have a force function of people feeling positive about what could be happening economically, regardless of the whole tariff conversation and argument. You have the Fed holding rates, not increasing them. You have inflation that is slowed. I'm not going to say lowered. That's not true. It's slowed. There's that. Despite the amount of jobs that are being like completely obliterated by the whole Doge thing.
Yeah.
I think the general consensus at the individual level is, okay, things are working back into my favor, even if it's slowly, and now I can make some sort of move.
Yeah,
totally. That's what I think this is going to reflect. And I think March is going to show that too. Once we get into April and May, we look back at March and April. I think last year, remember how we talked about, it's like spring and summer got a quarter turn to the right, like an entire 3 month quarter turn, and they were later. I think we actually might have a chance at a normal spring.
Yep.
It might only be a 30 day or 60 days off. It's certainly not going to be 90 days like it was last year.
And I like here that it mentions, the market challenges. Despite the positive trends, challenges such as affordability, high home prices, and economic uncertainties continue to keep the market active subdued.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I think it's that pent up demand that people are, still wanting to buy, but the situation might not be there for them. So I think as the year progresses, they're going to be entering the market little by little.
Hey, one thing before we go on, I wanted to point out, and this, I don't know if this is just the research source. It might be because there's some variety in this number. This is citing that the median home price was $398,000. And that's the first time I'd seen it under 400. Where did I put my note?
Under 400,000.
Under $400,000 for the first time in quite a while.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't see. Well, it's okay. It doesn't matter where it came from. Every once in a while, there's some variance about like $5,000 or $7,000. But this is the first time I've seen it under 400,000 in quite a while.
Yeah. I think it's where you're getting that source from, right?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because I know, you remember sometimes it's like, oh, it's 426,
Yeah,
it's 423,
exactly.
it's 417. It's like,
Yeah.
I understand there's some
398.
variance.
I
but
think that may be under looking in a different.
anyways,
398 right
my,
there, yeah.
my point of bringing
Different
that up
criteria,
is that what
that it
caught
has.
my attention was that it was under 400,000, and it hasn't been under 400,000 for quite some time.
No.
So, all right, that's going to kind of weave us into the next thing, guys. And this is, here's when to list your home for sale this spring. Oh, what do you know? Another headline talking about spring. It's almost like they want people to list their homes. It's almost like there's pressure coming from economists and the talking heads at CNBC and Bloomberg and Reuters and, maybe the White House. Like, we need to spur. Look, the real estate economy drives a ton of our overall economy. It just does.
Yeah.
It's a multi-trillion-dollar entity, if you will, all real estate assets combined. And there's billions of dollars of transactions that get done every single year. When the headlines lead, says, here's when to list your home for sale this spring, they're not saying you might want to consider da-da-da-da-da.
They're telling
this, you know what they're also not saying? Remember from 2 shows ago, episode 104, they said nearly 90% of homeowners worried about selling their house.
Yeah.
Guess what? That's gone. That was only 2 weeks ago.
No. But if you put it right now between
No, it was like 90% out of 10 people they've surveyed.
No, but right now if you put it between April 13th and the 19th, it's just going to be different.
Oh, I know, right? That's that little tight window. Like if you do it at this time, this
It's
is the
going to
most.
give you 27,000. I mean, that's
Yeah,
great.
right.
On average, homeowners who list their properties in the week of April 13th to April 19th could sell for roughly 27,000 more, according to a recent report by Realtor.com.
I mean, who's really taking this information and saying, oh, you know what? They're saying to sell now. Now I'm going to sell
I
now.
don't know.
But
It's-
just last month they said, hey, people were kind of worried about it. So it's kind of like, well, it's kind of misleading at times as well. Because it's like, well, one month you say one thing, the other month you say another thing. And it's like, well.
So what you're saying, Brian, you're disagreeing with this.
Yeah. I'm like, well.
Well, it's one of those
I think
obscure.
it just makes like, hey, throw that in there, see what happens. Like, hey, let's like
Yeah.
throw the pot up.
I think we should take category on something else too,
It's one of those obscure things where you're like, that's like a random tight little window that actually straddles both sides of the tax due date.
Like, is there any data that comes?
April 15th is a tax deadline. So I don't know what that has anything to do with that. It's just that's what's happening at that time of year. And if the 15th falls on a weekend, then the following Monday is the tax deadline. So it could be as late as the 17th. So
at the same time, it could be a good thing, right? You just putting it out there. People who are in the fence of when is a good time to put my house in the market after reviewing this or even hearing about this article, they may just reconsider their thought and say, instead of waiting for May, June, when I hear the summertime is a good time, maybe I just want to start now. $27,000 sounds very enticing. Let's see.
Yeah, and it may be, that kind of first to market kind of thing, because in areas where maybe there's some softening of pricing and there's some more price reductions or there's more negotiations for buyers getting closing cost credits or buy downs, then maybe getting in your house on the market now is better than another 3% later.
Yeah.
That's that possibility, and that 3% could be a little or a lot depending on your sales price. And more importantly, though, I think is the window that they mentioned right after that, which is the March 15th to July 31st window, when sellers in general, compared to the whole year, see their best sales prices in that 4.5 month window. And that is that spring, summer kind of window, which was very late last year. But this is predicting and kind of prodding and taunting people. Go list your house between March and July.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Spring is back.
Spring and summer
Spring
are
is back.
Spring, summer is back. You got to make sure we get the sunscreen for this guy over here. So San Diego was listed in this article. I'm not sure if you guys saw it or not. San Diego home listed as early as the second half of March could sell for roughly 2% more than other times a year. Hey, 2% on $700,000, $14,000 right there. So that's some real money for some people.
Yeah.
If you're in San Diego looking to list your house in the second half of March, apparently the data is on your side, whether you did it intentionally or
more.
you did it passively.
There goes the Realtors Commission, right?
Yeah, maybe, maybe not.
You'll cover that.
So I'm sitting in the position of thinking that we have our best chance this year of a normal spring summer than we've had in the last 4. Do you guys agree or disagree?
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually do agree on this, just because, we have a complete different, I think, mindset in the economy of what, direction we're moving. So I think that gives a lot of people more confidence that, as things progress, it's only going to get better. Although it's a slow start right now, like you said, that long tunnel is showing that light at the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other thoughts about that? You're playing it cool? I'm curious why you're playing it so cool.
No, I'm not.
Are you afraid of jinxing it? Because you're like, yeah. Uh-huh, yeah.
No, I just, I mean, I know they say it's just not typical times right now.
It isn't. That's why I'm saying that's why I posed the question that way. Is like, I think relative to the last 4 or 5 years, this is probably our best chance of it being a normal spring summer, because how long or how many times last year did we say, oh, new normal, this is the new normal? And it's like that became our like Fed transitory talk.
Again, here's the thing, Andy. When it comes to something that you've taught us, it's all about the data. We're always going to be listening not to the people who are very optimistic without data. We're listening to the true people that understand the market because of the data that's provided. And even with that data that's shown, that I've listened, that I've just kind of, just paid attention to, it shows that even this summer, ending this year, it's still going to be, it'll be considered the 4th consecutive year with the least amount of sales in history for homes. So it sounds good. Let me go with this. We got to go with it. It's what we're dealt with. So we're going to go with it, but it's not going to be your typical, normal, spring. It's
I think out of the last 3-4 years, it's not the best, but it's the best as we've had. And,
there you go.
So it's not good, obviously. It's like out of the bad, it's the best bad.
Well, it's not the best you've had in your career. Certainly in your 20-year career.
No, of course, yeah.
Yeah, 7-year career.
Yeah. But if you do look at it from the past couple of years, there's more optimistic. We're kind of more inclined to know what's going to happen because of what we've seen the data do the last couple of years, that now it's like, I believe that, but I take it with a grain of salt, because as you see, things could change with one month to another.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. I mean, we do have more inventory.
Yeah.
There is more inventory than we had the past 3-4 years. Mm-hmm. I get that. But we're still at its worst affordability crisis that we've ever been. So considering the home prices where they're at, they still had an uptick, which is great. Values are still going up. But when, you're having more homes, there's a reason why we're pending home sales are longer now. People are still on the fence. People can't afford. People are still trying to figure out, do I get that 3rd, that 4th job? Do I put my wife to work even though she's at home? Do I put her to work so we can figure this out? Right? So that's why I'm going with this. Like, it's great. Yes, there's going to be an uptick. I don't know if we're going to have that much more sales. That's where I'm kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Okay. No, that's fair. I think one of the things it's not noted here because I don't know how you would measure this, but one of the things I know I keep thinking about, at least on my own, is that people have come to terms with this is the way it is. Rates are going to be 6s. Prices are going to be where they're at. There's no 20% correction coming. There's no 3% mortgage on the horizon in the next 12 months. So I think there's like this collective, well, okay, so if I'm going to do it, I'm going to have to do it with these terms and conditions. And I think people are just coming to terms with that more in a bigger volume than they were in the last year or two.
Yeah,
I think that's honestly, I know it's an unmeasurable thing, but we've talked about how millennials are like this next biggest section of our demographics generationally. They're going to be home buyers, and like they're completely having a different behavior set than I think people would have originally thought. Because look, no disrespect, but like millennials were getting heat for a lot of stuff. Oh, they're lazy. They're unmotivated. They don't want to work hard. They just care about getting things. But it's like, well, then how come now they're like the fastest growing segment of the population buying homes?
Yeah.
How come they're the ones who are being flexible about where they live and why they go move there and how they make those ends meet by taking on roommates, converting the garage, building, like they're making it work. Yeah. So somehow they've convince themselves that this is the way it's got to be, and if I want this thing, I'm just going to have to do it this way.
Exactly.
I think we're at the end of the 3-year seasoning period where people were getting conditioned to this is the new normal, this is the new high, this is the new way of doing things, that now it's tipped over and like, well, I mean, if it's not going to get any better and the data's just, same, some days better, some days worse, then you know what? I'm going to take a hack at it and I'm going to have to figure it out and see what's out there, because if I wait longer enough, things aren't getting better.
Absolutely.
I mean, at least not in the way that I like for them to get better, but I gotta get in some way.
I agree.
Better meaning lower.
Like price. And that's what I talk to people. They're like, oh, I'm so well, what are you waiting for? I mean, rates are going to come down. Prices aren't. And it's like, at what point are you going to, feel comfortable taking that leap and making that sacrifice? Because I think it's very tiered. For some people, like 6%, 7% doesn't work, and they're waiting for that 5%. But unfortunately, if you wait, there's going to be a long wait for you to, drop down.
It might have to be 5.99 or 6.25 or something like that. It's not going to be 5 flat, maybe. Yeah. Or 4.5.
But there was a point that you were saying that, some of the sales that don't go through, I also feel it's like, dude, maybe they're banking on getting a credit to bring down the rate, and then the negotiations don't go as well as they wanted to. And now they're like, dude, do I really have to take on that 7 when I thought I was going to be able to bring it down for 2 years? And they're like, never mind, I back out.
Well,
and that's how we continue to get creative.
Oh man,
buy downs and
here's the thing. I guess I'll say to kind of conclude my thought here is that I think it's forcing the creativity. Yeah, like we weren't sitting around thinking of these kinds of things 6 years ago, 7 years ago, were we? We're like,
I mean, you're talking about 2022. We weren't thinking about these things.
I don't know.
You don't even have to go that far.
I'm just trying to give a big.
This is just crazy. This has been the last 3 years. It's freaking nuts.
But look at what's changed in what you can offer people, their willingness to, again, be flexible and do things and consider other ways to still make it work. Yeah. So I think it's and I've noticed this on the creative side, outside of just, the mortgage show stuff. Like I've noticed creativity sometimes when the pressure's on and you have to find a creative way out or in or through, the pressure is what causes that. It's like the catalyst for it. I'm not just sitting around when everything's easy going, how can I make it more difficult?
Yeah, no. And what I'm saying, I'm not disagreeing with you in that sense, Andy. What I'm saying is in the last 3 years, I feel more people have become a lot more creative. They've been able to use that mind of theirs to get creative. Prior to that, when you're comfortable, well, why do I need to get creative? Things are working, right? And so that's where it was like where I was going with. In the last 3 years, I've noticed myself being a lot more creative, seeing things a lot different and trying to figure out solutions, and that's what's actually allowed us to keep our doors open and expand ourselves into other fields where I didn't think we'd be building. I didn't think I'd be doing fix and flips, and I didn't think I would be surrounding myself with any of that. And here I am now, and it's much better. I like this new journey because we become a better resource to our consumer, our clients.
And I can argue inversely on that the people that don't, get their skills better, that don't surround themselves with other people, they're unfortunately are going to run around in circles and say, why am I not progressing? Well, you're not growing. You're not, taking skills that's going to better you. And I think keeping that sense is only going to get you better because there's always something better. There's always something happening, and you got to get, innovative.
Yeah. I mean, look at all the people we're getting surrounded by. It's fun. Yeah. It's fun to see these creative minds just say, well, maybe you should do it like this, or you should have checked this, or this is what you are able to build. And you're like, well, I
never thought about it like that.
I thought I could only get 4 properties on there. You're telling me I can do 16?
Yeah, homie, you built up.
How is that? But it's because of the questions you're asking. It's because you're putting it out there. If we're going in front of the teacher and we think we already know everything, we're just right there and we're not asking any questions, we think we're learning. But it's not until you start asking the true questions, and they're meaningful questions when you really start abstracting, as much as you can from that teacher, and they're just going to guide you through that process. Yeah. And that's how I treat everything. I'm just so open. I don't care if people think I'm done, because I am, and I don't care about that. It is what it is. I just don't know everything, but I want to be that person that just, I know who to rely on.
So you stepped on a landmine of opportunity here for a lot of people, and you just don't know it, because I'm going to say it right now. If you missed last week's Friends of Mortgage Heroes episode where Brian and Memo interviewed Andrew Greer, go watch that episode. Go look up Friends of Mortgage Heroes, Andrew Greer. There's a whole playlist on our channel. Go check that out. And then this week we have Sam. So these are back-to-back like killers in what he's talking about right now. So go back and watch Andrew's, and then look forward to this week for Sam. So
that's right. Inspirational people, without a doubt.
Awesome setup for me to like weave that.
Okay.
Weave that in. That was great. Yeah. I want to finish today, guys, talking about the future a little bit. The future of rates, the future of the economy, and the future of the Fed. My favorite people. Not really, but I don't hate the Fed.
But you know what, Andy? This time around at this meeting, it was Uncle Powell. It was just, I don't know. He just seemed to be more at ease.
It was more
optimistic this time around. It felt like, all right, I think we're going somewhere.
You know what I noticed? He didn't feel wound up.
Yeah,
like,
it wasn't tight.
But here's the thing. Like, when I used to watch and listen in like 22, 23, 24 even, I'm like, okay, he was kind of like the same. It was like this very linear, neutral, but now you watch him like last week and then you see the comparison. I'm like, oh, that bro was wound tight.
Dude,
that bro was wound real tight.
His pizzazz is growing, bro.
Yeah, you know, he didn't feel so like, I can't answer that question, right? Like, he just felt like we have a solution. We're going to work towards this. Like, he seemed a lot like his shoulders. It just seemed like a lot calmer. That's what I took.
Oh, yeah. The posture was completely different. The tone.
Very different.
The optimism. And I know they're not going to say, oh, we're optimistic like that overtly, but
the connotation of the words that they said gives off a more positive feeling. Like,
100%.
Oh, okay. Like, they're using words that aren't like, relative to regular people, and they aren't positive, but they give off a better vibe that it's in a better direction, instead of it being like, oh, why did he say that? What did he mean by that? It's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, yeah.
That's what it seemed like. Like,
yeah.
It felt better. It felt like we're moving in the right direction. There are going to be some hurdles, just like anything. Change comes with hurdles.
Yeah.
Change comes with uncertainty of what's going to happen. Change could come with successes. It can come with failures, and that's what we're going to figure out. And I just feel like the way he came about things was just like, we're going to figure this out, and yeah, we're looking at bringing down rates. I don't know yet, but that's in the horizon. So that gives a lot of puts things in perspective, like, okay, all right, let's adjust.
So I want to let you know that this was a very intentional inclusion in this week's show, because we're talking about inventory. We're talking about 2 episodes, how 90% of the people surveyed don't want to list their home or are fearful of selling. And then now you have like, oh, February pending sales are higher than they were in January. Yeah. January was slow. What is this comeback happening? Here's the best time to sell in the spring. This all lines up. Think about, whenever we're talking about vertical integration off camera, this all vertically integrates with, the Fed's posture and what they think is on the horizon, even though they can't like totally telegraph it. Their dot plot chart, I'll show you in a second, kind of telegraphs it. Yeah. Their comments say, okay, that storm that we were in is kind of behind us. They're not saying that exactly, but they're totally inferring that in their comments and the way that they're saying things. And I think that's why this is going to like have a cyclical effect.
Yeah.
It's like we're telling people they should be selling in the spring. We're telling people that, February pending home sales is up. We're telling people that rates are kind of good and they're going to only get better. And that's only going to feed that system to, guess what? Come bring up the economy again, because mortgage and real estate is a multi-billion-dollar annual business.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I definitely agree that the sentiment has changed.
Yeah, and for me, it was like, last September, what did we hear about? How many jobs were created?
Are you talking about the miss? 880,000.
You know what I mean? And so I felt like at that time they had to fluff things so that people wouldn't be so scared, fearful. This time around they came up and they're saying, like, for instance, our change in GDP, right, we wanted 1.7. And so now it'll be 2.1. I think what they're saying is, I'm just going to not fluff it and exaggerate things. I'm going to go to what's going to be more realistic.
Yeah.
People may not like what's to hear that, but this is going to be more realistic instead of us fluffing 880,000 jobs.
Yeah, overstating 880,000 jobs was a huge data miss.
Right, and then they go from unemployment 4.4, now they're saying projected by December it's 4.3.
And okay, I'm glad you said this. You don't know I'm going to say this. Here it comes, guys. Here's what's so interesting about that, and I thought about this, is if there's so many millions of people being cut off of the payroll from all these government agency jobs they have, shouldn't that show up in the unemployment number somewhere?
Absolutely.
Okay, so then I want to see that. I absolutely want to see if that's, I'm not saying I want to see destruction. I'm saying I want to see the numbers show up.
Yeah.
Because it's going to tell us 2 things. That's millions of jobs that are actually there that people have lost and they have to receive unemployment benefits as a result of. If we cut millions of jobs that actually didn't exist, then that number is going to stay consistent, thus verifying those jobs actually didn't exist. Yeah. So this is like the most intriguing part of the next 60, 90 days for me, is let's see what happens. Millions of jobs are getting cut.
It's crazy. You speaking about jobs, I saw Pulte. He's a director. Polte. And so he went to the Fannie Mae, to their headquarters. And you're talking about this building is ginormous. So they have to have like 2,900 people that work right there. And only like 200 some people showed up. And it was the janitors and the cafeteria people. Everything else was just like empty. We're renting all this space that costs millions of dollars.
Where they at?
And where they're at.
Work from home?
Exactly.
Work from home or don't exist, and that's the kind of the argument that's being made. And I'm not going to get into arguments with people about that. They're either telling the truth about it or they're not. Okay, is the bottom line. So I'm not going to get into the weeds about all that
because we're not there, right? I mean, you're going to believe what you're going to believe with the data that's been provided,
right?
You know, again, if you can prove it otherwise, go ahead. I'm okay with it. I'm a big believer that these things do exist, and there's a reason why there's a cleanup crew right now.
I ultimately think it's going to come down to just the black and white nature of some things, because either you're saying these jobs exist and we're cutting them, and that's going to show up somewhere else in the downline of the data, or these jobs don't exist, it's not real people, and it's going to be the same unemployment rate as you saw month after month after month. That's kind of part A. I think also the other part, you can see who's going to bluff. Who is the White House going to bluff first, or is the Fed going to bluff first? Someone's going to flinch or blink an eye or something because the White House wants our economy to go in this certain direction. They think the way is with tariffs. The Fed is saying, hey, we got to keep inflation kind of under check. It was at like 9.1% 3 years ago. Now it's down to the 2s and 3. Okay, well, again, I'm going to say it's slower, not lower, because there's still no negative handle in front of that number. But I think it's going to also come down to being very delicate, because the amount and the vastness of change is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And you have to be now very delicate in your next couple of moves, so that if there's a lot of this stuff tinkering and let's say the whole China shop is at an earthquake, well, which pieces you're going to put your hands on and which shelves you're going to hold on to, which ones you're going to just kind of let go, because you can't save everything, right? You see where I'm going with my illustration? So I'm very curious to see who's going to call who's bluff first. But the reason I'm going so long on this is because they specifically mention mortgage rates and the bond yield, which we talk about all the time. So the Fed's decision, the economics and the data that's supporting the Fed's decision, and then how the markets react is what is being said here, and which we know is a critical factor in what the forecast for 2025 and I'll say 2026 looks like for the economy at large. Yeah, it's connected to too many things and too many people for it not to be. Any other thoughts about that?
No, 100%.
No, thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, again, I'm just going to go back to, them setting the expectations where we were pushing things to go, pushing them to meet those quotas essentially right away. Now they're being more realistic. Like, based on everything that's happening, we're not going to meet that. We are going to have to increase this and be a lot more realistic with these matters.
Yeah, and I think some of that that I'll say truing up is going to take a while. And can I use another illustration?
Please.
So when you bake a cake, there's like flour, and then there's like the egg, and there's water. You got to mix it, whatever. So some of the things, like you mentioned the $880,000 jobs overstatement, like that's just way too much sugar in the cake mix.
Yeah.
Well, I can't undo that cake. Now I found out after it's all baked in, oh, there's way too much sugar in that recipe. I can't go undo that. But now that I know, and I'll use the right recipe moving forward, the cakes are going to look different.
Yeah.
And so there's some of these things that are, to make the pun full circle, they're baked in. So some things are baked in, and they're going to look really bad on the data part, because you're like, oh, wow, massive contraction of jobs and expansion of the workforce. Well, hold on. We just chopped off a huge limb of this tree. Okay. So just take note of that, be aware of that, and don't let the statistics draw you by the neck into the slaughterhouse.
No, totally. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't really want to watch the Fed meetings. I would be like dreading it. Like, I don't want to watch that thing. It's going to see the same crap already.
I like watching just the clips.
Well, yeah, but what?
But this time it's like, oh, it's kind of like, oh. You know what? I'll watch it next time. I'm curious to see what the demeanor is going to be. How is he going to answer the following questions again? Like, is he going to be a lot more relaxed like he was this last time? Or is he going to go back to that tensed up? And how do I have to kind of circumvent the question into, like,
Yeah. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what materializes in the Fed's dot plot chart. So I brought this to show you guys because of what you're saying. To see how they had the Trump administration, then they had the Biden administration. Now they got Trump administration part 2. And now having seen that fluidly from the beginning to end, this is going to be a really interesting snapshot in time of the history of the Fed. But on your screen for everybody here, guys, is the 2023 and 2024 Fed, what they call the dot plot chart. And this is the last thing I wanted to bring up today, is that in 2023, you see that a lot of the Fed numbers were guessing that by 2025, we'd have most of the rate. Everyone thought mostly would be between 3% and 4% on the Fed rate. And then when you ask them again in 2024, you have about the same amount in that 3 to 4% range, but a lot in that high 2, low 3s. So as time has progressed, you can see that their opinion on where rates are going is down.
Yes.
Which is going to hopefully land us somewhere in 2025 and the beginning of 2026 in a much more, let's say, safer, stabilized long-term zone, now that all the curing they had to do is over because of the high rates they had to ramp to and hold them.
Yeah,
that's my take.
And I'm going to say it's going to be 2026 where we'll start seeing that.
Agree. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that we'll start to see it at the end of 2025, and then it'll really take hold in 2026.
Yeah,
for
right
sure.
now for me, it's all about save whatever you can. Just save, be frugal. Just don't make purchases based on wants. It's got to be a need. If it's a want, throw that away. There'll be a better time for that later down the line. For now, position yourself better so that you can take advantage of the opportunities when they present themselves.
Yep. How about you, Brian?
I think that, I'm curious to see what 2022 looked like, because then at the end of that, basically in 2025, everything's leading for it to come down. So what do you think as far as, knowing this information for the regular people out there, what do you think that's going to do for the market, knowing that things are on the way down? What advice would you guys give to anybody like that knows this and wants to get in the market maybe in these next 6 months?
In the real estate market or the financial markets?
In the real estate market and financial markets.
So I have two competing thoughts. They're not in any particular order. The first one is get your house ready now. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking to buy a house in 2025 or 2026, start that process right now. Because if it's true that prices are not going to go anywhere, but the cost of borrowing might go down, then that is a huge way for you to kind of know and forecast for yourself and pace yourself into home ownership. If you're already paying rent in an area that's equivalent to what home ownership costs would be, then you are the prime person to be able to get qualified and also find a house. If inventory comes up, prices stay the same, but borrowing costs go down, that is the formula. That's my short code formula for, hey, get a house. Exactly. The second thing is what you're talking about. And you've talked about time and time again. Get a budget, make a budget, follow it, pay off what you can, save everything else, and invest part, because it's about time in the market, not timing of the market. So if you're in your 20s, you're in your early 30s, start putting money away now. Even if the market has a correction in the financial markets of 20%, 30%, but you're dollar cost averaging and you don't need that money, then you can afford to let it ride for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. Mm-hmm. And anytime you do a 20-year, 30-year look back, guess what? Everything's always much higher when you look back for that long period of time. So those are my two thoughts.
No, great advice. I think, pay attention to the long term of what you're going to do. Getting into a home, preparing yourself right now. Yeah, if things are tighter right now, just little by little, figure out how am I going to pay certain credit cards or certain loans off right now, if that's what you have it. Because a lot of times that prevents you from making that decision of, let me just jump into this big investment, And so what you have to do is just focus on the smaller things, which is those little credit cards, take those out of the way. Create a habit that's going to help you just break through that old habit of spending and I'm going to pay it later. Yeah. Instead, just try to hammer those away. Don't go spending. Download those value meal freaking apps, McDonald's, whatever, stick to whatever you have to do. But the whole idea and the whole goal is just don't go on the spending sprees. Save that. Put that money away, or if you have money in the bank account, go and do an APY account somewhere. Just Google APY and a percentage yield, and that's going to pay you a lot more than just having your money in the bank account, where you're earning nothing. These APYs will pay you anywhere from 4 all the way to like 6%. Yeah. Right now banks are in need of your money, so go invest it where they need your money, where they're going to give you a better rate of return on that investment. So that's another place to put that asset to help you just, hey, you know what? I have $100,000. It's going to earn $5,000, $6,000 at the end of the year. year where it was earning nothing, that can help me pay off a credit card later down the line, you know, or it's just going to help me for that down payment later. So focus on the long term, right? If I can do this now, short term, pay off this debt so that long term I can get into a potential investment that's going to be for my children. And when the rates start going down, you start affording a bigger, larger home for that growing family. Perfect place to put yourself in.
Yeah, that's good advice, especially if you can afford to like park the money for the time they want you there, 6 months, 9 months, or 12, or whatever it is, depending on the yield and the time they need. If you can afford to do that, that's a great way to kind of cut inflation off at the past and then get yourself a little bit of return just for being okay separating yourself from money that you don't really need actively every single week and every month. So that's a great idea.
And not going into a CD either. You know what I mean?
Right.
These things are just like a regular checking account.
Yeah. So. Awesome. Well, guys, what was your favorite part of the show, Brian?
The sentiment of the Fed is now positive.
Yeah.
Or should I say positive?
Wow. I am so, I'm like shedding a little tear on the inside. Like, he's growing up. Memo, how about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Brian. I'm gonna go with him on that one. You know, it just gives you that that courage to everything that we've been discussing in these few years, where things have really been, you know, almost crisis mode. This just puts us at a it gives me that relief. Like, okay, I'm telling my clients, I'm giving them the right information.
Yes.
And so that's why I like that, is because I feel confident that the information we're sharing with them is indeed something that's going to impact them in a positive way as we move forward.
That's a great answer. I am so proud of both of you guys, and I'm actually going to take a departure this week. I am not going to say the Fed. I bet you both were probably like, oh, we got money on Andy saying the Fed, because he somehow snuck that into this vertical integration of these articles today. Mine is actually, here's when to list your home for sale this spring from CNBC, because I think, look, I read a lot of news, a lot of financial news, a lot of headlines.
We know.
And okay, I gotta get it. But look, there's a tone to writing a title. And they can write titles to make you immediately hate whatever's about to follow in the body of it, or immediately like and prompt you to maybe think that what they're suggesting to you is a really good idea. There's a lot of psychology behind this, because we see it all over the news and we see it on all these sites all the time. And I think that this one kind of overtly saying, here's the best time to sell your house, go for it, is like this permission to proceed. We need inventory. Things are looking up. Light at the end of the tunnel. It's all those things kind of happening at once. I actually like this. I don't always agree with everything on CNBC. I bring it to the show because it's a financial outlet that we talk about often with the housing and real estate. Yeah. But honestly, for me, that was a bright spot in preparing for today's show.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Good for you.
Yeah. So I appreciate it. And if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you catch our weekly show every single week. And we also have another playlist called Friends of Mortgage Heroes. So we interview our friends in and around real estate and talk about what has created success for them in their career and in their life. And these guys are doing some amazing interviews recently.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you guys are doing a great job.
Yeah, but if you guys do like it, you know, you found something interesting, pass it on to a friend, a family member, somebody you think that could, you know, maybe this is a good listen.
Yeah, something that we talked today that might be helping someone, you know, who is maybe kind of telling you an issue on their side to kind of privately, hey, I might be doing this, I might want to do that. Like, this is a great way to kind of send them something that will in full circle come back to helping them without them having to raise their hand and go, I need help.
I would say the only fee we charge is that if you got value, you like something you heard on this, something that, you know, is going to help you out, share this with a friend or family, because that's how we're able to help more people. We're able to reach more people. And, you know, the information that we give out, we want to make sure that it's valuable, it's good, and it helps you succeed in your life.
That's right.
Well, thank you guys for another great show. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you again next week.
See ya.
So if you enjoyed this video and got value from it, subscribe right here. And if you want to watch another video, click right here.